We just pretty much...
It's as good as it's going to get.
We are the home of
everyone.
professional podcasting.
Hello, everyone.
It's as good as it's going to get.
How are you, Rich?
I'm good. Why would anybody listen to this podcast?
It's,
we have fun, right?
Isn't that, I was going to say, isn't that all that matters?
Personal therapy or something? I don't know.
I have a lot of personal therapies. Everyone always asks me, because I post like food pictures on Instagram, they're like, why do you do that? And I said, because it's cheaper than going to therapy.
Right. And
like
then,
cooking and eating.
And you don't have to bring any to your pastor or anything like that.
You wanted like a day-old cheeseburger or what?
Who would want to, eat food, But
some food doesn't hold up all that well over 24 hours, but,
yeah, because we live so far apart. There's all that.
Anyway, can I tell you something?
I'm just here to whine about not getting enough food
something to whine about
as
now.
I'm morbidly obese already, so...
By medical definition. Can I tell you something about me?
Please do.
I love fall.
That is not news.
If you know
Anybody
me
who's been listening to this podcast for 10 minutes knows.
Less than that. So, we had a special guest in church on Sunday this past week, and she came up to the podium. It's not called a podium.
It's called whatever you decide.
Okay, I decided
you
podium.
You are the producer.
That's not the church name for it. Why can't I think of the name for it? Pulpit.
Lectern.
I was going to say lectern, but that seemed even less.
Place to stand.
Okay, she came up to the place where you stand, and she was wearing a flannel shirt, and I was like, yes, this is good people. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you go, girl. So anyway, that's my first impression of you, Carlee.
I was told that we had a little cold on Sunday morning.
It was a little cold?
That's what I was
Emma
told.
Emma always says it's cold, so.
I was schwitzing, so,
Well, that's because you're morbidly obese.
Oy, it was so humid.
Hi. So anyway, I like Carlee. Carlee Harrington is our guest today on the podcast, and she is going.
What's up, Flannel Carlee?
Hello.
You might need to turn your volume up if you're listening at home. We've got Carlee. She's out of town right now, so we're gonna try to work. We've got her on speakerphone here, so we're gonna try to work that as best as we can. But Carlee Harrington is from our area, but now she works for a. It's not. Is it a nonprofit organization or is it a ministry association, Carlee?
It is. It's a nonprofit.
Okay.
It's a nonprofit ministry.
Oh,
yeah.
So it's both.
Nonprofit ministry.
It is called. Well, I'll let you talk about it, Carlee, because you're here to give your.
That's why we bring in our
right.
super cool guests.
Right. So anyway, without further ado, this is Carlee Harrington. She's going to tell you a little bit about the ministry she works for.
Yeah.
Take it away.
So the first thing I'd like to say is right now in Myrtle Beach, the average temperature is 100 degrees with 100% humidity.
No,
so as soon as I stepped off that plane in Chicago, I put a sweatshirt on.
I feel that.
75 out.
Right.
Which is what God intends.
Right.
Yes.
Why would anybody live there? That's crazy.
And I'm adapting for sure, but it's very hot. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, when you can bite the air, I'm not into that. But
so I moved to Myrtle Beach about 4 months ago now. But I worked for a nonprofit down there called Ground Zero. We're right downtown, right by the boardwalk. And our mission is to be a place where teens can go below and grow. Oh my gosh, I can talk. Go belong and grow.
Okay.
And so we do that through different events and through relationships. So we have different weekly events, we have monthly events, one-time events. But our weekly events is where we build the relationship with the teens in the communities around the area. And one thing that is really interesting that I did not know when I moved down to Myrtle Beach, it's a loophole in the Myrtle Beach laws where communities down in city limits can opt out of all emergency services. So they can opt out of police, like ambulance, fire department. If they opt out of that, if you call 911, no emergency services will come to your aid. Wow. And so they're called donut holes. And so most of the kids that come to Ground Zero on our weekly events walk from these donut hole communities that are around.
Wow.
And so that's like the demographic that we're aiming to serve, is those who just need a place to come and feel safe, feel cared for. We provide meals when we have our events. So like on our Wednesday night events, that's our biggest event of the week. We open our doors and students in middle and high school come in and they get a meal. The past few weeks it's been pizza. We have, chicken tenders, just some basic concession food. And then we have a coffee shop that we open up where they get a free coffee drink. And most of the time they get, like what you would get as a frappuccino at Starbucks.
Like a dessert, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Just straight sugar.
Right.
And we get to hang out with them. Our goal for those nights are 80% relational, 20% ministry. So we're just there trying to love on these students and get to know them and get involved in their lives. And so we play games with them. We have 9 Square, which is so much fun. But we play that for a while. Before? We have different video games and board games. There's ping pong tables. There's really any game you can imagine. And we just, because it's such a good way to talk to students without it being just awkward because you're there sitting and doing something with them. So we get to have fun with them for a little bit. And then there's a 10 to 15 minute message. We do a stage game, which I always get to lead, which is so much fun. But it's just like super weird games. I think last week our game was Olympics, and it was the people on stage had to decide if the Olympic sport that was pictured was real or false. So like there were some normal ones like croquet or diving, but then there was like wife carrying, which was a fake Olympic sport, and then there was pigeon shooting,
but it's a real sport.
Olympic sport. But just like weird and crazy games that are just fun, make everyone laugh. It's so fun.
I was surprised to find out that wife carrying is an actual thing. That's an actual sport. That surprised me.
Oh, wait, you're being serious?
Yeah, no, I read a whole article about competition that they're at, was it in Scotland? Someplace in Britain.
Oh, that's our biggest audience.
Yeah, let's go UK.
We've got, for some reason, a huge, I won't say huge, but,
percentage-wise.
A big chunk of our demographic listeners is actually from the UK, so I don't know.
Oh, wow.
So they're all like, wife carrying.
Which must be where our negative reviews come from.
Right, all our negative reviews come from the UK. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you. Go
People
ahead.
actually listen, right?
That's fine. That's so interesting. That's so cool. I don't even remember.
I don't know if it was interesting or cool, but it was nice for you to say that. So
you were going through your schedule of what usually consists at these Wednesday night events.
Yes. So we have a video message, and then my boss Scott, who founded the ministry, he goes up and just kind of wraps up the night. And then while we wait for people's rides to come pick them up, we just play more 9 Square. And then by the end of the night, those who are walking home go ahead and walk home. And then from there, if they want to get more involved in their relationship with God, then on Monday nights we have, it's called I Grow, which is our small group night. And so students can get connected there. We do a Bible study and just get to know them on a more personal level there. Cool.
What's the age group? What's the age range for this, Carlee?
6th to 12th graders.
Okay.
So 11 to 18 year olds.
Wow. And do they get split up at all, in different areas, or is it all just one big group when they come together?
Right now, it's one big group. Okay. When we start small groups back up in the fall, right now for the summer, we don't have them going just because people have so many things going on in the summer.
Right.
So we don't have Monday nights right now. But once we start back up in the fall, our goal is to separate our small groups into even smaller groups to just have more intentional time and split up the guys and the girls, because this past school year it was kind of just one big group because there was about 15 or 16 students that would come every week, and so we just did one big group. But our goal is to build that Monday nights to where we can have a few different smaller groups and split up the guys and the girls so that we can talk about more stuff that's relevant to us rather than everyone.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
You have any questions?
Well, excuse me, on a personal level, what has been beneficial for you as far as being a part of Ground Zero, being in this particular community, and so on?
So, but when you say beneficial, do you mean like, how have I grown?
I think that would be a much better way of asking than what I did. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. Really the whole package. How is God working in you? How have you grown? How are you growing? What is it that you aside from just the work of it, what is it that you're enjoying about it? And how are you seeing God shape you through this?
Yeah. So I love getting to know these kids. I had never pictured myself working. So my degree is in events and sports management. And so when I graduated, I wanted to work. When I went to school, I wanted to work for like a Major League Baseball team and do, marketing for them, which that eventually translated into, okay, I want to work for a nonprofit that makes a difference, but plan events for them. But I had never pictured myself wanting to work one-on-one with students. And I absolutely love it. I think just pieces of my story that I've gone through help me relate to these students a lot, but also some of these students just go through so much that I can't even, it's just one of those things where these students go through so many intense things at such a young age. And I wouldn't say I'm thankful I'm there to be there for them, but it's just one of those things where God has placed me there so I can be just a rock for them when they go through hard things. And it's grown me a lot because I know you said not necessarily the work part of it, but it's hard for me to separate myself from the work that I'm doing. So all throughout college, people say, once you are out of school, you have so much free time because you clock out and you're done. But that is not my reality at all. I get off the clock and I have students
That's nobody's
texting
reality.
me, just, seeing what I'm doing. I have a student that texts me every morning, "What's up?" Right. It's like, I'm working. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of real situations that these students go through where I leave just continuing to dwell on it and continuing to pray on it and just being like, God, like, what's happening, And so I've definitely been growing in learning how to rest, first of all, taking a Sabbath, taking that time to be like, okay, this is the day that I get to just spend. Yeah, I can think about, the things going on at work, but that's not what today is about. Today's about, resting with the Lord, taking the time off that I definitely need, and just enjoying my time while I'm in Myrtle Beach, next to the freaking ocean. What the heck? It's so nice.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, no, you can. What were you going to
ask? Well, when you talk about growing, I feel like, you coming from this area and, you said on Sunday that you graduated from the local high school here and it's a very small community, very rural.
Small town, rural, right. Midwest.
Right. And so...
near the mini ocean.
Right. So, I won't pretend to know anything about Myrtle Beach, but from what you were saying, this little section that you're in, when you first got there, it was probably a little bit of shell shock. Just experiencing that, knowing where you're coming from. So,
and even your college experience at Central Michigan was not exactly super urban or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like it was probably impossible for you to not. And I feel like when you have a baby, they say throw them in the deep end of the pool to get them to swim.
Not immediately.
Now, don't give birth and then throw your baby in the pool. But it's kind of that same feeling. You kind of just had to dive in head first with a completely new experience. So I feel like it was probably impossible for you not to grow and kind of be forced to grow. And just seeing how your background and upbringing in contrast to what these kids are going through, I think correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure that you were right away were like, wow, I got to do something to bring what I can and what I've gone through in my life to help these kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I find that really interesting.
Sorry. I need to drink some water real quick.
Don't worry, Rich hacks on the podcast.
It's part of the gig, right? So we actually should make that a requirement for our guests.
You have to cough.
You have to be be a part of Stacey's Supercuts.
Yeah, I've been saying for 3 years that I'm going to create a supercut of all the times Rich has coughed on the camera. So now you're a part of it.
There's no shortage of material here.
True. Anyway, sorry. Proceed.
Well, in addition to that culture shock, it's probably, quite a shift for you as far as your preparation, because clearly going to a state university for event planning and stuff, that's going to prepare you for an aspect of the job and maybe the actual work of the work, but the ministry focus, clearly you're not getting that at a state school. So, do you think, God prepared you for that through your church experience, through, small group training, personal discipleship? How do you think God got you ready for what he's using you for right now?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I led a small group for 4 years.
And that was part of his house, is that right?
Yep. Yeah,
just a little shout out to his house.
Woo! So I led a small group there. Different people every, school year. But that kind of helped me prepare relationally, when people come forward and you get to have those deep conversations and, praying. And that helped me partially. But then also my last 2 years I was at his house, I was part of the women's ministry staff. Not staff. We weren't paid. We were kind of like a board, almost like women's ministry board. And I got to take part in that. And I think both of those experiences combined helped me learn bits and pieces that definitely have come in handy working in ministry now. Just, the organization of things and how to handle some situations, how to, when there's disagreement, how to be kind of in the middle and help facilitate those, how to just love on others and be there for them when they need it, how to just be willing to answer the phone even when you don't want to. When you see a phone call coming, you're like, it's 11:30 at night. I do not want to pick this up, but I know that there's a reason they're calling me right now, so that needs to be answered. So I think all the experience collectively have definitely helped me. Like you said, though, I was so shell-shocked as soon as I got down there. It's such a different world, but it definitely pushed me more towards where I needed to be. Because I think if I didn't have those experiences in college, I would be way over my head right now.
Right.
In a good way, but they definitely helped a lot.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier kind of the division of labor, so to speak, as far as the focus of the different events that you guys do, where it's 80% relational and 20% ministry and vice versa on the other events. And yet, as you're talking about this, it sounds like it's really difficult to separate the relational part and the ministry part, because pretty much everything you're talking about, whether ministry or conscious relationship building, it's all relational. It's all dealing with that individual on an individual level. And even as you're putting together these large events, it's still about a person-to-person connection of heart reaching heart. Yeah. And that really fits well with what our ministry is about. At Real Life, our purpose is to reflect the reality of Christ through relationships. So we believe that promoting truth is central to that, to be able to reflect the fullness of God's character as displayed in Jesus. But we can only effectively really do that through relationships, whatever those relationships happen to be that God brings about for us. So we really want to be able to look at that relational context and bring out reality with that. And so with this podcast, with Something Real, And what we're seeking to do here is to connect the reality of God to the realities of life as we experience it. So what you guys are doing there at Ground Zero seems to be a real sort of a hand in glove sort of fit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have a lot of, so right now we average about like 60 to 70 students on our Wednesday nights. And I'd say probably about half, well, no, maybe a little, I'd say about 40 of them. We do have those good ongoing relationships with, where we're working on building those and getting to know them more. But then the other like 20-ish that come a week, 20 to 30 that come a week, maybe only come once a month, maybe once every few months, or they're very standoffish toward, well, I wouldn't say standoffish, but you go, hey, how's it going? And they're like, good. And then they go and hang with their friends. Because they're not ready to have those, deeper conversations yet, which is, totally fine. Like, they're still in our building and we love that they're here. And so we have those ongoing relationships, but especially like on the Wednesday nights where we have those students, we're focused on reaching those ones, like the 40 that we are close with, like, it's great because they're always reaching out to us and talking to us. And, we love having those relationships. And that's, really relationships is how personally, if I didn't have the community I did in college, I would not have the relationship I have with the Lord, because they're my friends surrounding me and pushed me and helped me learn, things that needed to be learned, challenged me, reading the Bible and getting into the Word and really studying, which helped me grow and helped plant the foundation for the relationship that I have with the Lord now. And so I think that's definitely something that's going on there where, Monday nights, when we are able to get into the Word together and have some, there's usually some questions that we ask, and everyone participates when we have the questions, which at first surprised me because, when I led a small group, sometimes no one would
answer.
Right. And so just having, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids be so hungry to grow together in that way is so inspiring, honestly. It was so cool. And so, on Wednesday nights, right now we're focusing on, those kids that come, once every few weeks that, I've tried reaching out to some of them, but their phone numbers change so often. Sometimes it's so difficult. So when they come in, you get so excited and you're like, yes, like, this is the night I'm going to try and have a conversation with you. I hope that you want to have a conversation with me and just get to know you more. But I just love that it's a relational ministry.
Well, yeah, I think that's really cool. Such a smart and effective way of doing things, especially with that, with those age groups. We've talked about it plenty of times on the podcast and just, in our personal lives. It's very different when you're speaking the gospel or talking about Jesus with somebody that you have a relationship with, as opposed to just Bible beating somebody. They're so much more likely to, and you can speak to people in different ways depending on your relationship with them.
Right. Yeah, it's the authority of the relationship that really carries the weight.
I can talk to you in a different way than I can talk to somebody I met 2 days ago.
Absolutely.
So forming those relationships, I think people often get the misconception that maybe Christian programs with kids or youth groups or things like that. I think there's often a misconception that it's just to have fun, and some probably do fall into that trap and let's go have a party, let's go bowl.
More than some, which is why you end up with a lack of depth.
Right.
A lot of it, so.
But doing it in such a way where you are combining the two to form relationships and then really dive into what's important. I think that's such a strong way of doing things, especially with kids and teenagers. So.
That's really true. Programming is truly ancillary to ministry. If you're talking about youth ministry or adult ministry, whatever it is, programming is not unimportant because it's sort of the gateway. And Ground Zero kind of is an example of that. These kids come for these different things, right. But that's really just getting them in the door, raising awareness. What matters is building that trust in the relationship, because nobody, somebody's going to, we've been talking a lot about trust here recently as we dealt with a lot of different things. And when I trust someone, I might not have any regard for the Bible. I might not give the Lord a thought. But if I trust you, and when I'm seeing the world just swirling around in stupidity all around me, and I recognize that we are living in evil days, then when I trust a person, I'm much more willing not only just to listen to what they're saying, but when I don't know where to go for answers, I'm going to go to somebody I trust, and I'm going to listen to that. So, Carlee, as you're developing these relationships with kids that 4 months ago you didn't know at all, that are from a completely different background that you're from, than you're from, not even, you're not even from the same region of the country. They, might hear that, Michigan accent and say, well, what is this strange person?
Oh, yeah.
But, as you're dealing with that, fostering those relationships is a more secure platform than any event or concert or games. Those are great and fun to connect, but those are just to really get you to that point of connection so that you can do what you do by being, heart to heart with those individuals. So that's huge.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, the concerts are so fun. I have not experienced a concert at Ground Zero yet, but we're planning some.
Yeah.
I'm jealous of the Jordan Feliz one.
What was that?
Stacey's a big fan of Jordan Feliz, so that's kind of...
yes.
I want to go to that.
Be down November 6th is the day.
I'm not going to Myrtle Beach in November. That's my fall time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness.
But
they're so fun to plan, but the real
you're going to Myrtle Beach anytime soon, right?
So. True. Yeah, I'm not going to Myrtle Beach, period. Sorry.
Stacey she barely leaves the block, let alone the town. So
I only go to this church because it's on the same street.
her big excursion is going to Myers and Stevensville. Woo! So, she gets up there.
Every Thursday, baby. Anyway, kind of going along with that, and we'll let you go here in a minute, Carlee, but I wanted to say, and I think Suzanne actually... Suzanne is one of our other missionaries at Real Life in Hungary, but she's here now for the summer for several months actually. She mentioned, it's easy to think, when most people think of a missionary, you think of somebody in a foreign country, building churches in Africa or something. That's, I think, the stereotype of missionaries. So I think maybe some people might think it's not as important in the U.S. or an easier job or something like that.
Myrtle Beach, that's vacation town, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah. So it's kind of eye-opening and also gut-wrenching to hear about one charity I really like to take part in is Feeding America, because it makes me sick that there are children in this country who are starving in this country.
Yeah.
And so there's so much going on that the average person doesn't know about or think about or realize in our own backyard. So I definitely want to, plug Ground Zero as much as possible on this platform that we have. So if you want to talk about the needs that you have, that the organization has, and really what you're seeing down there and what kind of a difference it's making, that would be great.
Yeah. So most of our students are from the downtown area, but a lot of them, I wouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them deal with drug and alcohol abuse at the age of 12 and 13. They have parents who are dealing with addictions. Some of them are homeless or have families who are moving from hotel room to hotel room every few days. There's gang violence that happens. Some of them have ended up in jail and do community service at Ground Zero. But we just have a lot of... the need down there is great. And a lot, coming from small town Three Oaks, I wouldn't say those things gang violence, there's no gang violence in Three Oaks, like what? But there's just a lot of things that these kids deal with at, such a young age that I probably had never even thought of at that point in my life.
Right.
And so, here, I'll tell a cool story. Because Ground Zero is down there, and, you say Ground Zero to a lot of people some of the people at my church will be like, yeah, I work at Ground Zero. And they go, oh my gosh, like that is such a cool organization. So like a lot of people outside know about it.
Nice.
But I wouldn't say all the kids know about it. So we do different, I can't think of the name. Like we go to schools and do, oh my gosh, I can't think of what they're called. Like we do different things at the schools.
Welcome to my world.
You're on the right podcast.
What in the world?
Words are hard.
But we bring different people to schools just to, like, we have Keith Davis coming down in November, who's a former NFL player, who's going to be talking about his testimony. But we have him booked at a few of the high schools down there and middle schools to just kind of give like a teaser, so that kids are like, oh, like this is happening at Ground Zero tonight. Let's go and hang out there.
Like an outreach type of thing.
What was that?
Like an outreach type of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So our goal is just, get these kids in the building. Let's have these conversations with them. Let's get to know them. But one of the cool stories that I've loved sharing, because I think it just kind of puts into perspective how I wouldn't say important, but just how awesome of a ministry this is. I mean, it is an important ministry, though. We have 3 students who came pretty consistently. One of them is a student leader, but they were living downtown and they were taken out of their home because of some abuse from a parent, and they were put in different homes across the state of South Carolina. So we're talking, I think the furthest one was 2.5 hours away. The closest one was about an hour. And so we would drive the hour to the closest one to pick her up for our Wednesday night events. And then we drop her off afterwards. But we were just like, wow, like we want to get these kids back here. They miss Myrtle Beach. They were taken out of their school. They've lived there their whole life. We just want to get them back here. And 2 of our volunteers, they're married. They stepped up and said, we have been thinking about fostering some kids for a while. We want to take these kids in if we can. Wow. And within 2 weeks, they were expedited through the foster care system and got custody of all 3 kids.
Wow.
Which is just so awesome how God used the ministry to do exactly that. Because it was just so cool. And then even more fun part of this story. So the foster parents live in the subdivision right next to my apartment. One of them is a bus driver and one of them is a nurse, and they both work very early mornings. And they had no one to take the kids to school in the morning. And so I was like, heck, I live right there. I'll be the bus driver for him in the morning. So every morning in May and June, I would wake up and get in my car and take the kids to school, it was kind of really fun, because then again, I can continue to build those relationships. Right, I see them every morning. I get to talk to them. Sometimes I was half asleep, but I'm still there,
Right.
I had to make sure I have my coffee.
Right.
But it was just
again, you're on the right podcast.
So. Made that connection to make that happen.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So as you're describing this, and it's been kind of on my mind. We've talked about this before, and obviously I know your family. Carlee's mom and I met in 6th grade in a school function, and her grandma and I go back farther than that because she was an aide at our elementary school. And so Carlee's mom, Chris, was one of my best friends from 6th grade all through high school, and played football with her dad. He was a little younger than us, knew him forever. And I kind of joked about this Sunday morning, and you and I talked about this. It's got to be tough in some ways on a parent, or even just to make that mental transition yourself from a career-focused college path to realizing, wait a minute, I could go and make money with this, but what I really want to do is make a difference. There's something bigger. And on Sunday, as we were talking about wise living in evil days, the core reality that we were looking at in the sermon was that the wise do not live for temporary things, but for God's eternal purpose. And so I want to commend you on choosing a wise path, a harder path, rather than having a job that gives you a lot of money. You're in a job where you got to come up with money to be able to do the job. That's a tough path. Suzanne, Stacey mentioned earlier, was a missionary to Hungary and support based. And speaking of all the relationships, all that we deal with here, everything is relational. And Suzanne's my sister-in-law. Anyway, while you were talking on Sunday, she immediately got onto social media to try to promote you and to let church folks know who may be watching online or whatever else that they really need to be looking for ways to support, because it is tough. And as Stacey mentioned, it's even tougher to get support for a domestic ministry like this. So thank you for choosing a wise path so that you're setting aside temporary things to be able to live for God's eternal purpose. Thank you to Ground Zero for doing that very thing, deciding that, of all the things that we could do with our time and assets, we are choosing to make a difference in someone's lives, specifically for the gospel. And you and I talked about this when we first talked about support. The idea that it's not just, people see the big splashy things, the events and so on, or even see the temporal stories of kids that are in some sort of a crisis situation, some sort of a difficulty, and we want to get them out of that. We want to try and make, how would people say, make their life better today. But the reality is, and it seems like you guys are pretty clear about this, there's no way you're going to be able to fix the families and the environment and the economy that they're dealing with. You're not going to be able to do those things for every individual. But what you can do is bring the gospel. And in the process, again, the gateway of programming is one way into relationships, but also a way to build trust is to actually invest in life here, in the temporary things of this life that will pass when we pass from the planet. But at the same time, taking those temporary things and redeeming them, making the most of those opportunities to bring kids, to bring students and families into an eternal perspective, to be able to deal with the things that will last beyond the grave. That's huge. That's a huge thing. And that's, you guys are really kind of living out Ephesians 5 verses 15 and 16, which, that was our focus verse, our memory verse, that, that as Christ followers, when we've been changed, we need to be very careful then how we live, not as unwise, but as wise. And the NIV says, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. And in these evil days, not a lot of times we'll think of the headline morality stuff, but more than that, just in the godlessness and the distortion of truth that is prevalent in our world, the days are evil, period. In the injustices and the poverty and bigotry that goes on, these days are filled with evil. But you guys are making the most of every opportunity as you do that. And so on behalf of the church, we want to thank you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Carlee, I do want to give you a chance then to especially with our UK audience.
Amen.
How can people support you or support Ground Zero going forward?
So I have a personal fundraising page. Like we've kind of mentioned, I am a support-based missionary. So my paycheck comes from people willing to donate their money to help what we're doing down in Myrtle Beach. And do you want me to give you the link for that? Like verbally?
Well, you know what you can do? You can text me afterward and I'll put it in the description for the podcast so people can just click it.
Yeah. So there's that. Ground Zero also is a completely support-based nonprofit. And they have their own link, which I can send you to.
Yeah, please do.
But any money that goes to that will go directly to the ministry. Any money that goes through the Reliant link will go directly to me.
Okay.
And then follow us on social media. Ground Zero has a Facebook and an Instagram, and I think a Twitter page also. But we post a lot of updates on there. We're going to start doing like a video series on YouTube, I think. So find us on there too. But those will all be under Ground Zero MB. Okay. M as in Mark.
Okay.
And then B is in beach. Or
Good, 'cause
MB is in Myrtle Beach.
MB is in That makes more sense, yeah. All right,
Yes.
cool. Well, yeah, I'll put all those links in the podcast description and wherever we share them, so people who are interested in learning more or supporting you can take a look at that. Did you have any closing thoughts, Rich?
I think we've covered most of what needs to get covered. Always got more I can
I know
say.
you do. It's a stupid question for me to ask every week. But so yeah, Carlee, thank you for joining us today. Taking time out. You're heading back to Myrtle Beach tomorrow, right?
Yep. Yeah,
All right.
I'm flying out tomorrow.
Well, thank you. So yeah, I'll put all of that information in the description. As always, if anybody has any questions or comments regarding the podcast, you can feel free to email us at somethingreal@reallifeonline.org. Leave a comment on our Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. Or you can leave us a voicemail either using the Anchor app, if that's how you get your podcasts, or leave us a voicemail here at the church at 269-756-RLCC.
Are we still on Insta?
We're the podcast was never on Insta.
Okay.
But our
church
church is, so if you're interested in our church, you can follow us on Instagram too.
There you go.
So that's all I have. But Carlee, thank you again for
And if you
joining
want
us.
food pictures, you can follow Stacey directly.
Don't follow me. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, Carlee.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.